everybody, it's Denise with Lazy K Mountain Homestead. Well, welcome to our channel. If you're new here, we are a small little homestead in the middle of Tennessee on the Cumberland Plateau, and we try our best to grow everything that we possibly can to eat as far as vegetables, and we have animals, and we have chickens, quail, turkeys, rabbits, goat. We did have pigs. We're going to get pigs again. Um, so we try to make everything that we can. We do buy from the grocery store, but there's just some things that you have to. But I hope you follow us and subscribe. And if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe because we're only 17 subscribers away from 500. And that will really make our channel grow if we can get 500 subscribers. We've got a lot of videos. I think we've got over 300 in the last 2.5 years that we've been making videos. So I hope you follow along and enjoy. I really appreciate that. Well, today what we're going to do is we are going to make dilly beans. And if you don't know what dilly beans is, it's a green bean that is canned in a dill brine, just like a pickle. So it's kind of like a green bean pickle, but they're called dilly beans. They're really yummy. They have garlic, a little bit of cayenne pepper, and some dill weed or dill seed. I have both because we grow our herbs and we harvest them and try to keep the spices full with everything that we do grow. So what we did was we picked some green beans that we've got here. We see. So there are the green beans. These are called white half runners. You can use any kind of green bean that you can get your hands on. If you buy them at the store or you grow them yourself. Now this is a pole bean, which means it grew on a pole, it climbed a pole, and they're old-fashioned heirloom, and they do need to be have the strings taken off. So let me come a little closer and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, you want to take off your ends, both ends. And then with pole beans, you have to, sorry, my hand was in the way. You have to string the beans. And you see the string coming off? And you want to make sure that you get rid of that. And with dilly beans especially, you want to make sure that your bean is fresh enough to snap. Do you hear that? Because you want a fresh bean. And these white half runners are a short little bean, so they're perfect for a pint jar. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this one over there and show you what I'm talking about. Here's a pint jar, and here's your bean. And you're going to stack them. Once you've taken the strings off and you've discarded both ends, you're going to go ahead and stack them in here. They're all going to be standing up. So that's kind of pretty too. It's a little bit different than if you're just canning beans and you have them broken up in a size and you just put them in your jar. So like I said, we're just going to take that off. You see that string? That, you can't eat that. That, you'd be chewing on that for days. And believe me, you wouldn't be wanting to swallow it either. That is what comes on a pole bean, the string. Really old-fashioned, great flavor. These have great flavor. Willis, my husband's family used to grow these. His grandpa grew acres and acres of these, and put them up, sold them, and everything. This is way back in the day. But he said he doesn't know why he didn't want to eat these anymore. So I bought some this year, and I said, let's try these. So we did. He made them. He said, this is the best flavor. And I said, well, your grandpa knew best. So anyways, like I said, you're going to stack them in there. These have already been washed. And you do want to wash your beans because, like anything, they've been outside and they do, little bugs fly on them and dirt and rain and things like that. So you want to wash all your fruit and vegetables when you bring them in the house. So what I'm going to do, well, before I do that, I want to tell you my recipe. This is the recipe right here. If you want to take a screenshot of that, I'll have it in the description box, but this is it right here, Dilly Beans. It is from the, I am in the United States, so this is a United States American recipe, and it's from the Ball Blue Book Preservation. This is pretty much what we go by here as safe practices for canning. I mean, there are some recipes that are handed down from our grandparents and stuff that I still do that aren't in this book, but I know that my grandmother used them, and so I know they're good because they've always been good. But anyways, this is what this recipe is from, and I think every couple of years they come out with a new one. So you can check on that. It may not have that on the title. But anyways, what we're going to do, like I said, I'm going to just string these beans. And if there's any blemishes, let me see if I can find one. Okay, here's one with a blemish. I'm not going to use that one for a dilly bean. That's either from a pest or a blight, and it looks more like the blight. So I'm going to discard this one. You don't want to use anything that's got this kind of imperfection, I guess is the best way to call it, on there, because you want your beans to be able to seal, and if it has imperfections, then they won't seal. It'll just be a bad batch. Now this recipe makes 4 pints. I'm going to go ahead and make one recipe, and if I probably got enough for 4 pints here, because that's a lot of beans to stack on their end in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start doing this with my beans, stringing them. You want to discard your strings, and like I said, anything that's bad. I wish Willis was here. He's never had dilly beans. His family never made them. My mom and I learned how to can back in 1971. That's many years ago. And she would go through the Ball Blue Book, and I have her old one here somewhere. I need to find it. Oops. You don't want to put your strings in there with your good. And she found the dilly bean, and we made it, and this is a really healthy snack. It's crunchy. It's green beans are good for you. A lot of good vitamins. It has vinegar, of course, and you want to make sure your vinegar is the 5%, not the 4%, because your shelf life will be different with the 4%. It has garlic, some cayenne pepper. You could also use jalapeno if you wanted to. Now you can use powdered pepper, or you can use just the regular, if you've dried them. Yeah. You want to make sure that on these kind of beans that you go down both sides, because that's where these strings are. It looks like that one is okay. Let me just make sure. Yeah, that one's okay. Otherwise, like I said, you'll get that string, and you will not want to eat your dilly bean or your green bean if you're just having green beans, fresh or canned. Now, there's a lot of bush beans that are heirloom that don't have these strings. This is just nature's way. Now here again, we've got one that's got blemishes, so that one gets tossed over there. So we are in the middle, towards the end of August, and I am in my element with all the harvesting. I just love it. And so far this week, yesterday I made salsa with some of our tomatoes. I've got more tomatoes. I'm going to make juice. I've already canned tomatoes. I've got videos on that. We've canned green beans. We've canned grape juice. We have grapes. And I've canned plum jelly, grape jelly. Let me see, apple jelly. Our peaches didn't do good this year, but Willis brought me some peaches back from Georgia. He's a trucker. And most of you guys know that follow our channel. So he's always bringing stuff back from all over the different states, and I just love it. Like I said, we try to be as self-sufficient as we possibly can, and we do raise our own chickens and, like I said, pigs, and we do butcher them. I don't have videos on that because I don't think YouTube allows it anymore. They used to. They don't do that anymore, just because it offends some people. And even though that is a self-sufficient part of the life, I understand. Not everybody can stomach stuff like that. It is what it is. And if you're vegan and you want to try these, this is great because it's just garlic, pepper, dill weed or seed, and vinegar, and your green beans. It's a great snack. I know a lot of my mom's friends watch my channel, and they always call her and tell her, say, Denise made such and such. She said, talked about you. She lives in a different state that I do. So it's nice that she gets to see what we're doing over here. My dad was a big gardener, and he's pretty much the one that taught us the love of gardening and farming, raising our own. He was from a child of the Great Depression, so he knew a lot of what to do naturally instead of it being a fad, kind of like it is. It was more of a necessity, and I've always felt like it's a necessity, and it also helps offset the cost at the grocery store, especially if you grow your own, if possible. I know some of us don't have a lot of room in our yards, but you can grow anything in a 5-gallon bucket or a pot on your patio. You can grow green beans. You don't have to grow pole beans. You can grow bush bean. They grow about this tall, and you can get 3 pickings off of a bush bean. So just make sure that one was okay. There's ways to be self-sufficient even if you live in the heart of New York City. I do believe. So now some of these I'm not going to use because they're too little. I'm just going to discard them. I've got a bunch more beans that I'm just going to can later. Make sure that works. Yeah. Sometimes you got to find these little sneaky little strings, but that one's still fine. So I will be back when I am finished stringing these, and I will have them in the jars, and we will go ahead and get our brine ready, and then we will can them. It's really a simple recipe. The hardest part for me, is taking the strings off. If I didn't have to worry about these strings, I'd already have them in the jar. But I love to grow heirloom. I think it's a great way to keep traditions alive, to keep our memories alive. And it's, clearly up to you what you grow, but I think it's a great thing to try to grow our own food. So I'll be back in a few. Okay, guys, I'm back. I wanted to show you what I'm talking about as far as putting your beans down in your jar, standing on end, like so. Now, if you've got some that are a little bit long, you're going to want to kind of snip them off with a pair of scissors or a knife. If you've got green beans that aren't this short, you're going to want to go ahead and take one of your jars here. Just measure it out and then cut your green beans accordingly. That way they'll fit in there really nice. But what I do is I go ahead and I have a handful of my beans, and I get them all straight in my hand like that. Now this, I only had the one wide mouth, so it's going to be like that. You see it's a bunch. I'm just going to go ahead and fit them down in there. Okay, so that starts it like that with this kind of jar. So what you're going to want to do is get the other beans, and you're just going to go ahead and just put them in there just like you would if you were putting pickle spears or cucumber spears. to make cucumbers like that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish filling my jars, and then we will be back and we'll start the brine. Okay, I've got all my jars filled. They're over here waiting for the brine. So, per the recipe I showed you earlier, we need 2.5 cups of white vinegar, 5%. You're going to go ahead and pour that in your pot. And then you want 2.5 cups of plain water. So it's equal parts, 2.5 cups of each. Okay, and then we've got a 1/4 cup or 1/4 cup of salt. We're going to go ahead and put that in our pot. And we're going to go ahead and stir this around. And we are going to go ahead and have it on medium-high. We want it to get warm. And once all that salt is gone, melted into the water and vinegar, it will be ready. I believe we do have to bring it to a boil. We're going to go ahead and can it in a water bath canner. If you don't have one of these, you can use a stock pot. This is a stock pot. Right here, you need one at least that big and that deep, because when you put your jars in there, you're going to want the water to at least be an inch over the top of your jars. But I will caution you, if you do use one of these, or if you use your water bath canner and you don't have one of these in there, a rack, you're going to want to put a tea towel down in there, because with it boiling and canning, they can kind of hit the jars, hit together and crack. So that's just caution and from experience too. Okay, so I've got that over here. I'm going to put it on the stove in a few minutes to get it going. I always try to keep my water simmering. So we'll do that in a second, but I wanted to show you the spices that we need. And we're going to put the spices right on top of the jars before we put the brine in. You do not add that to your brine as it's boiling, because you want all of this to be in there so everybody gets the same amount. Nobody gets any more than the other. So we're being fair. Okay, so what the recipe calls for is garlic. You can either use a fresh garlic. I've got minced. I don't have any fresh garlic. This works fine. And I've got red pepper. And we grew and ground this ourselves. Potent. Yummy. Cayenne. And then I have got dill weed and dill seed that I was telling you about earlier. And we went ahead and you can see the seeds right there. That'll go in. Everything on the dill plant tastes like dill. So if you don't have a bunch of seeds, you can use the weed part, and you can actually buy the weed part. The stalks taste like dill. Everything tastes like dill. It's pretty cool. So, and I just love the smell of dill. It smells so fresh. Okay, so what we have to do, according to the recipe here, is we are going to put 1 teaspoon or 1 clove of garlic in each one of these jars. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in here. On top. If you like a little more garlic, then you can put a little bit more in there. These are really good. I'll tell you, I love garlic. I may not want to talk to anybody after you eat these, but that's okay. You can sit in your closet and eat your jar of Dilly Beans. Okay, so next we are going to need let me see here, 1/4 teaspoon of the red pepper. Now, like I said, if you don't have this ground up, you can go ahead and use 1 cayenne that's dried, 1 pepper itself that's dried, or you can use 1 jalapeno. If you got jalapeno powder that you made, you can use that too. And again, if you want these really hot, you can add more, but I think 1/4 teaspoon to each one of these is plenty. Okay, now for the dill, we need, let me just see here what it says, 2 teaspoons of dill to each one of these. So let me get another, because that's kind of juicy from the garlic. Let me get another teaspoon over here. 1 teaspoon. And like I said, every part of the dill plant tastes like dill. I'm going to get as much of the seed out as I can. I'll probably use most of this that I harvested. You don't want to skimp on your dill because it really kind of does taste like something's missing when you don't put enough dill in there. I did that one year with pickles, and I was very sad. So I've got just enough for another. It used quite a lot of dill. You can buy dill at your local Rural King or grocery store. I go to Rural King because I get really good deals on dill weed and seed. Big package. Okay, so there you go. There's that. Okay, so next it says, bring this to a boil. Let it boil for 10 minutes, our pot with the vinegar, water, and salt in. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on high because it's not quite ready. And in the meantime, I've got my jar lids and my rings hot. I always do that because that's the way I was taught to can. And I always feel like having your rings and your lids hot. There's a seal on there if you've never canned before. This is a lid. It has a little rubber seal right there, that red, this rubber seal. And what the water does, the hot water does, is it kind of gets it moist and rubbery and pliable. And what that does is when you put that on each one of your jars, it's going to have a better seal, or it adheres better to it. So that's my opinion. There are people out there that think we don't need to do that anymore, but that's, clearly up to them. Like I've said in many of my videos, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that always works for me, and I just feel like it's the part of canning that we shouldn't leave out. So I think it's the like Ball or whoever, the lid maker companies put that out. And I've had people argue with me before. I'm not going to argue with you. You do you. And it's up to you how you can. So I just think that's the best way to be. The older Ball books do suggest that. Okay, so we are just waiting for this to boil, and I'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, the brine has simmered for 10 minutes. We brought it to a full rolling boil. Almost couldn't get that out. And then turned it down and let it simmer for 10 minutes. And that ensured that all the salt melted into the water and vinegar. Okay, so you want to use a funnel. This is a canning funnel. It's very old. But you can get them. You can get a little kit at Walmart, Amazon. And I'm going to go ahead and ladle into my jars the brine. And you want to go all the way up to about an inch headspace. I always use this as my guide. I hope this will be enough brine. I followed the recipe. If not, I'll have to make more. Sometimes you can add water to it, but it looks like it probably will be. Sometimes when you're making pickles, you can add water to the brine, but I should have done that before if I wasn't sure this would be enough. I think it will be. Yeah. It's taken about, I don't know, 2 and a smidge ladlefuls. And then I'll go back through and distribute more of the brine on top if I need to. I just want to make sure I'm, oops, not using my ladle. Hope you can see me doing this. I think you can. Oh, it smells so good. My goodness. And then I just kind of go back and just add a little bit more if I need to. All right, there was a little bit left over, so we add just a teeny bit to this one. And for this, it says, let me see the headspace that it's giving on this. 1/2 inch headspace. Okay, so we're right there. Okay, so next we want to go ahead and wipe off our, of course I don't have my rag, it's right here. We want to wipe off any debris. With this, you know, that was a little garlic. Anything that might be in the way of your jar sealing, and that's why you do this. You can use a wet paper towel. I just happened to pull this out of the dryer, so it's good to go. Okay, now we're going to go ahead. Now this is a really cool tool. That comes with your canning kit if you ever buy one. I didn't use these for years. I was like, oh, I'm old school, I don't need that. Well, believe it or not, it's really nice, especially when your water's hot. And that's why they make them. So you don't have to stick your fingers down in that hot water. You're just going to set every one of your lids on top. You're going to come back with your ring. And you're just going to hand tighten everything. And hand tightening is very important. I know a lot of people used to tighten them down and for all they were worth, but you don't have to do that. And the reason is, canning, when they're canning, water bath or pressure canning, these lids are going to contract and expand. Contract and expand. And that's just part of the canning, and eventually they seal. So you don't want to tighten them so that they don't, or sometimes they burst because they can't contract and expand like they're supposed to. Okay, let me back this up a little bit. I've got my water bath canner here. I'm going to go ahead and set my jars in here. And I have to make sure that I have enough water that it's going to go over these, and I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and pour some of this water in there. And I'll have to add some more hot water. Now, what I didn't mention with canning is, you know, like I had the hot brine that went into the jars and made the jars hot. So you want to make sure that your canner is warm. The same kind of temperature if you possibly can, and you don't have to go and measure it or anything, but you just want hot to hot, cold to cold. So if you're doing anything like, if you don't want your jars rather to burst because of the temperature change. And that's just a tip from experience and really years of canning. It's common sense. Okay, so I've got about an inch over these jars. And let me see here. I've got it on high. I'm going to put my lid on. And we're going to go ahead and bring it to a full rolling boil. And then we're going to, as soon as it starts boiling like that, where you can't, well, I would say stir it down, but you're not going to stir it. You're just going to turn it down a little bit. I usually go to medium-high, and it continues to do the rolling boil. And that is going to be for 10 minutes. Let me just make sure. I've had people argue with me on here, and I go by the Ball Blue Book. Okay. So it is process pint or quarts for 10 minutes. Turn off the heat and remove the cover. And then you're just going to let them kind of cool. If you have an air conditioner on like I do, you're going to want to make sure your air conditioner is off when you pull the jars out. And it only takes maybe a half hour to get the temperature in your room to where you can pull these jars out and not have any problem. Not scaring anybody, but it's common sense. So we're just going to go ahead and bring this to the boil and let it then boil for 10 minutes. And then we'll cool it down and we'll bring them out, and I'll show you what the dilly beans look like. Hey guys, well, it's the next morning and the dilly beans have cooled, and They're ready to be put on the shelf. But I wanted to go ahead and open a jar so I could show you what they look like. And the lids are nice and loose. I've already put on there what they are, Dilly Beans from this year. Now, as in pickles and things, you usually wait maybe a couple weeks to make sure that they are nice and pickled. But these pickle really fast. I can't wait to try them. Oh, I'm so excited. So I've got my fork here. And there's your dilly bean. And here it is in the morning. I'm going to be eating garlic. Luckily, only my friend Kathy's coming over. But anyway, do you all hear the crunch? They're still crunchy. They are so, so good. I hope you give them a try. It's hard to eat on camera. Well, have a great day. I hope you'll subscribe like I asked. I really would appreciate it. And see you soon. Bye.